Hey, wake up. It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast, I'm Sam Sachs. It's the Friday show. The weekend is so close I can smell it. Actually, that's not the weekend. That might be a gas leak. And we begin on social media. We have to. For what's probably the biggest, most public falling out between a U.S. president and their billionaire benefactor ever. It was always bound to happen, but it's now reaching a level of note after Elon Musk accused President Trump of being a pedophile. It was a rapid escalation in a burgeoning feud after Musk's what appeared to be amicable departure from the White House last week. Though Musk did have a strange black eye at the time. A few days later, Musk took swipes at congressional Republicans' One Big Beautiful Bill, calling it an abomination and urging lawmakers to vote it down because of how much it adds to the deficit. President Trump, who had not responded to Elon's attacks on his signature bill, finally lashed out and accused Musk of turning against the bill only because electric vehicle tax credits were removed.
But I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here, better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden he had a problem, and he only developed the problem when he found out that we're going to have to cut the EV mandate.
Musk then freaked out at the president, posting on Twitter, quote, "Without me, Trump would have lost the election, Dems would control the House, and the Republicans would be 51-49 in the Senate. Such ingratitude." And later, Musk posted, quote, "Time to drop the really big bomb. Real Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT." Not really a truth bomb, since all this stuff is very well known already. I mean, there are videos of Trump and Epstein partying together and ogling young women. Trump's name is in the Epstein files that have already been released, since he was a personal contact of Epstein's. Also, this truth bomb reflects poorly on Elon too, because it suggests he knew Trump was a pedophile, but still helped him get elected and worked with him for months. But I do respect Musk for going there. I really do. Anyway, then the president started posting on his own social media site, both men using their instruments of mass media to rally their supporters. Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, "Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. I took away his electric vehicle mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody else wanted, that he knew for months I was going to do, and he just went crazy." And then a minute later, Trump posted, quote, "The easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it." Well, that would pretty much ruin Musk financially. His companies receive more than $10 billion from the government. Elon, trying to act like a big shot, responded to the threat with his own threat to cut off U.S. access to space. He said SpaceX would decommission its Dragon space capsule. Now, I'm not a lawyer. The Trump administration doesn't care about the law anyway. But that appears to be grounds to seize control of and nationalize SpaceX. Access to space is a national security issue. There are U.S. astronauts currently in space, and this guy just threatened to ground everything. The U.S. government has planned for this scenario, and it probably wouldn't even crack the top 70 in constitutional abuses committed by this administration so far. And I'm not the only one with this idea. Here was longtime Trump advisor Steve Bannon.
SpaceX President Trump tonight should sign an executive order calling for the Defense Production Act to be called in SpaceX and seize SpaceX tonight before midnight.
Yeah, that was around the same time Bannon called on Trump to immediately deport Musk. Now listen, I rarely agree with Bannon, almost never agree with him in fact, but when he's cooking, he's cooking. Speaking of space, the first casualty of this beef was Elon Musk's billionaire buddy Jared Isaacman. Over the weekend, the president pulled Isaacman's nomination as NASA administrator. He was just days away from his confirmation vote in the Senate, and there was no indication Isaacman was going to lose. The White House didn't initially provide a reason for ditching him. Isaacman said it was because of his association with Musk. He told the All In podcast, quote, "There were some people that had some axes to grind, I guess, and I was a good visible target." Isaacman is an investor in SpaceX and has relied on the company for support on his own privately funded space missions. He was reportedly recommended for the NASA administrator job by Musk. Another casualty of this feud? Kanye West. It appears to be making the Nazi rapper anxious. He posted on Twitter, quote, "Bros, please, no. We love you both so much." The back and forth ended up being a lot more costly to Musk than the president, for now at least. Tesla's stock plummeted, causing Musk to lose around $30 billion in wealth in a single day. Friends, I don't know how this is going to end. I have some ideas on how I'd like it to end. Many, many ideas, in fact. But for now, I'm just going to enjoy the show. The Washington Post published a deep dive into how the federal bureaucracy is now operating under the constraints imposed by President Trump and Elon Musk's Doge, back when the two still liked each other. New rules that froze department credit cards and consolidated spending decisions to political appointees at the top are grinding down the functions of government. Even expenditures on things like office supplies require sign-off from Doge stooges. Here's some examples from the Post. Quote, "Large-scale firings spearheaded by Doge have cut support offices, especially IT shops, that assisted federal workers with issues ranging from glitching computers to broken desk chairs. Within the General Services Administration, the government's real estate arm, more than 1,500 project requests, including fully executed leases and notices saying construction can begin, backed up in an internal tracker awaiting political appointees' attention," records show. Some items waited for months, and almost 200 are still on hold, while about 300 were never approved, according to an employee. And the list goes on and on. Quote, "At NASA, employees recently wrote several detailed paragraphs across multiple rounds of emails to win approval to buy simple fastening bolts. At the Food and Drug Administration, once routine tests on food, monitoring for accuracy in labeling, coloring, and exposure to heavy metals, were delayed significantly because the agency began requiring department-level approval for expenses at every step, purchasing samples to test, paying to ship samples between labs, buying lab supplies. At air traffic control towers at 24 West Coast airports, officials are unable to easily pay to have windows washed and shades cleaned, according to the FAA. Then there's crap like this. Quote, "At some parts of the National Institutes of Health, every grant must now be fed through an AI tool to screen for references to concepts deemed unpalatable by the Trump administration, such as DEI, transgender, China, or vaccine hesitancy. At the State Department, employees are spending hours combing through official documents to remove the words diverse, equitable, and inclusive, said a staffer there, months after Trump issued his executive order ending diversity efforts. Wow. Thank you, Elon. I can see the government operating much more efficiently now. This engineered slowdown is particularly evident at the Commerce Department, which oversees the National Weather Service, which has become a target for cuts and layoffs during the Trump presidency. At the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, there are 5,700 contracts expiring this year, and so far, the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, hasn't gotten around to reapproving any of them. Lutnick was asked about this arrangement during a hearing at the Senate Commerce Committee this week. Here's questioning from Senator Jack Reed.
It's been reported in the press that you are insisting on personally reviewing every commerce contract over $100,000?
That is true.
Well, that seems to be something that is not particularly efficient, and that results in the 5,700 contracts just in NOAA. So, again, if you can't find reliable support to do those reviews, I think you're wasting your time, frankly.
So I am tasked with the responsibility of my department, and contracts over $100,000 should be reviewed by the secretary. Now, I may have more energy and more time, and if you drive by the Department of Commerce late at night, you're going to see our lights on because I'm going through it.
Let's go ahead and get those 5,700 contracts done.
There are not,
this
under
weekend?
any circumstances,
How
any
about this-
contracts
how
sitting
about
there,
this
there are
weekend?
none.
Can you get it done this weekend? Work overtime with the gang and get it done?
There are no contracts waiting for me.
Well, that's not true. According to a recent report from E&E News, in addition to the 5,700 contracts soon to be expiring at NOAA, waiting for approval, there are hundreds of others that employees are waiting on Lutnick to sign off on. Quote, more than 200 NOAA contracts, including one aimed at helping local communities prepare for extreme weather events, are now stuck in limbo, waiting for Lutnick to make a decision. The impasse has forced NOAA to furlough employees, and it has created a work environment where NOAA staffers spend much of their time trying to justify their work rather than doing it, they say. One NOAA official told the outlet, quote, everything has ground to a halt. We prepare briefings and fill out new forms. Nothing is addressed until the very last minute or later. Stress and urgency is very high. So either Lutnick is lying to Congress here, or he had a cram session before the hearing. Either way, dysfunction across the bureaucracy isn't by accident, it's by design. Grind down government agencies and their workers that are tasked with performing oversight and reining in capital. Make them ineffective. Lutnick knows exactly what he's doing here. Listen up, gang. We've got some critical business to attend to. It's time for Rich Dicks. Thanks for all the nominations over on Blue Sky. Education Secretary Linda McMahon was named. The billionaire professional wrestling mogul who covered up child sexual abuse is deconstructing the department she leads and taking with it public education. During a Senate hearing this week, McMahon defended for-profit colleges that scam students at a much higher rate than public schools, and she defended her department limiting tools that indebted students can access to not have to repay fraudulent loans. So yeah, I'd say she's certainly deserving of a nomination this week. Next up, a nomination for intellectual dork web philosopher Curtis Yarvin. The guy has a host of followers on the right, including Vice President J.D. Vance. According to a new profile on him published in The New Yorker, Yarvin's just a weird little guy who thinks the U.S. should have a corporate monarchy. The outlet reported that when Yarvin was in college, he used to constantly wear a bike helmet on his head, even in class. Other students called him Helmet Head. This is the guy who's implanting bad ideas into J.D. Vance's mind. And finally, of course, we've got a nomination for all the damn landlords. Thank you. All very strong contenders to choose from, but ultimately, this week's Rich Dick is Jared Polis. Yep, it's the Democratic governor of Colorado's turn. Thanks to Matt on Blue Sky, who, well, he did most of the work for me today. Excellent nomination. Let's check out those links. First one, Governor Jared Polis vetoes bill that would have banned algorithm that White House said drove up Denver rents. Okay, well, that's pretty stupid. Yeah, this involves platforms like RealPage that allow landlords to collude and artificially drive up rents. The Department of Justice is investigating the company for illegal antitrust violations. Several state attorneys general have also sued, including Colorado's. So why did Polis veto this? Because he didn't want to create a hostile environment for landlords. According to his veto statement, quote, "This bill may have unintended consequences of creating a hostile environment for providers of rental housing and could result in further diminished supply of rental housing based on inadequate data." Okay, but what about the intended consequences of illegal price fixing that's driving up rent in your own state, Jared? What about that? Coward didn't want to upset the landlord lobby. Pathetic. Shall we move to headline number 2? Here it is. Governor Jared Polis vetoes Colorado rideshare bill that had strong opposition from Uber and Lyft. Another profile and courage, I see. In this case, Polis killed legislation that would have required Uber drivers to get background checks and allow for rides to be recorded if both the driver and passenger consent. It's aimed at improving passenger safety. Uber threatened to leave the state if it passed, so Polis caved, and he vetoed the bill. Next up, headline number 3, which reads, Polis vetoes bill prohibiting surprise bills for ambulatory services. Thank you, Governor, for letting insurance companies gouge people at their most vulnerable times when they're suffering a medical emergency. Polis stymied the bill because he claimed it would increase insurance premiums by a whopping 73 cents a month. He said, quote, "By every estimate, this bill raises costs for consumers." Well, I'm glad Polis saved consumers about $12 a year so that they can get charged $800 if they end up in an ambulance later. What a prick. But there's more. Can't believe there's more. Polis did all this stuff in like the last 3 weeks, going full goblin mode. Let's check out headline number 4 from Matt. Quote, Jared Polis vetoes Colorado labor movement's priority bill. Well, of course he did. This bill would have repealed a quasi-right-to-work provision in state law that requires workers who vote to join a union to hold another vote to approve paying union representation fees that then allows the union to negotiate with an employer. In that second vote, 75% of workers need to approve it. So it's basically an added hurdle meant to deprive unions of money and workers of effective representation, which is why Polis vetoed the bill that would have removed it. He claimed, quote, "For decades, it has created peace and stability between employers and unions, which is beneficial to workers and businesses in its own right." Business groups lobbied heavily against the bill. Colorado's Working Families Party called Polis's veto a, quote, "betrayal of working people in Colorado." Damn, you're really on fire here, Jared. Polis has a history of doing this. Last year, he vetoed 6 Democratic bills, including ones that crack down on wage theft in the construction industry and improved HVAC systems in schools. Someone please inform the governor that his job entails more than just vetoing good legislation. Actually, I shouldn't say that because he might get other bad ideas. Polis is also currently being sued by a top labor official in the state for taking steps to assist President Trump's illegal mass deportations. Oh, and I don't think I mentioned yet that the governor was one of the early supporters of Robert Kennedy Jr.'s nomination to be Health and Human Services Secretary. Polis claimed he shared a lot of common ground with Kennedy and was, quote, excited about the nomination. It's all just really, really bad. But I guess this shouldn't be too surprising for a governor who's worth somewhere in the range of $500 million. Polis made his fortune selling a trio of internet companies, including Blue Mountain Greeting Cards and ProFlowers.com. So, he might be a Democratic governor, but really, he's just out there protecting his own class interests. And that's why Jared Polis is this week's Rich Dick. And thank you again, Matt, for doing my work this week. All right, friends, the show ends today with a sunrise from Pennsylvania. It was sent in by Jihei in Chester County. Enjoy. Thanks, Jihei. That's the show. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the team behind the scenes. Find more MMN at means.tv. We also have a YouTube and a podcast channel, and you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. One day capitalism will fall. Until then, we'll be right here. We do have a few days off coming up, but I'll see you at the end of next week.